Welcome to today's Chief Data and Technology Officer Summit. This is our sixth and final summit for the year. I'm Caitlin Halferty, Director of the IBM AI Accelerator and host of our Summit Series. Quick recap, we started our Chief Data Officer Summits back in 2014. We had a premise based on a research report I wrote along with my data colleagues on the business of data. Leading companies were just starting to appoint data leaders, and those organizations were starting to outperform on an important set of financial measures. Some of you have been with us since our first summits. Thank you very much for being integral members of this community. We hired our first global Chief Data Officer, Inderpal Bhandari, shortly thereafter, so we're now nearly 5 years into the journey. That really turbocharged our internal transformation to become a data and AI enterprise. It expanded the scope of our summits, and it really gave us an opportunity to be very transparent about our journey with you, our clients, our customers, and our colleagues. We grew that first summit from 20 attendees to a roster now of over 850 data leaders. This year, we all faced our biggest challenge as COVID-19 hit. We were really determined to keep our community thriving, so we pivoted to deliver the Summit Series online. In a true testament to the strength of the data and technology leader community, the quality of our expert speakers, the topics we sourced from all of you, these summits have exceeded expectations. We have had over 600 attendees from 13 countries, primarily chief data, analytics, and technology leaders, and 14 C-suite industry expert speakers. We were intentional about delivering cross-industry insights. We had speakers from financial services, banking, insurance, retail, telecommunications, media and entertainment, and other industries. We also committed to growing our core constituency of data leaders to include chief technology officers. We grew that community significantly as well. All series long, we've convened industry experts to deep dive on pressing issues we all face and surface best practices as data practitioners. CDOs leading in turbulent times, AI ethics and trust, data-driven technology initiatives, CDOs and CTOs in partnership, data privacy and governance, and hybrid multi-cloud use cases at scale. Today, we've invited our speakers back to address the questions that we didn't get a chance to tackle during each session and join together at the end to congratulate the 2020 Chief Data Officer of the Year. Before we turn it over to live Q&A with industry experts, we will showcase an incredible area of opportunity, quantum computing, and how it can change the way we all work. As always, please use this forum as an opportunity to ask your questions, share your perspectives and your expertise, and connect with your fellow participants during the session and post. In addition to thanking all of you for making the investment of your time to join us and share your expertise all year, this series would not have been possible without the incredible work of our IBM Data and AI Marketing Events team, my extended team, and the great partnership we have with CDO Club, the most powerful community of C-suite digital, data, analytics, and cybersecurity leaders. So with that, let me turn it over to Dave Matheson, CEO of CDO Club, to jump right in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Caitlin. Welcome back, everyone. It's great to see you all again. I'm Dave Matheson, the founder and CEO of the CDO Club and CDO Summit. I want to thank all of you, especially for participating. We received lots of questions from our audience, and we're going to get to many of those with our speakers later on today. As you know, in October of 2020, IBM announced plans to spin off their services group in 2021, and IBM will now focus like a laser beam on data, AI, hybrid cloud, and quantum computing. Today, we're going to dig deeper into the final foundation of IBM's future, quantum computing. Many of you know from those previous episodes that one of the architects of IBM's future foundation is IBM Global Chief Data Officer, Dr. Inderpal Bhandari. And certainly the Red Hat acquisition is going to be the big enabler for their hybrid cloud future. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Dr. Jamie Garcia. Nice to meet you, Jamie, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to meet you too.
Thank you. Well, let's get started with an overview of the issues from Inderpal Bhandari. Great to see you again, Inderpal.
Great to see you, Dave. You know, the way we've done the IBM CDO summits, our goal has been to be leading edge. You know, in 2016, we made a big push, a big focus on artificial intelligence in the enterprise. And so part of our goal here with the CDO community and the CTO community is to educate, to be on the leading edge. And then as we at IBM are going down that path, we are very transparent about what we're doing from an experiential, from a practitioner standpoint, so that others can, learn from what we've done, address those pain points in a much easier way than we've had to.
Tell us what's different about how a quantum computer processes and stores data, and just in general, can you tell us a little bit more about quantum and how it relates to our data and technology leaders?
Yeah, I mean, so this is a fundamentally different computing platform. And I do want to mention too, our 2023 device, so the error there is going to be on the order of 10 to the minus 4 for a 2-qubit operation. And so what that really is saying, and to Interpol's point, is that we're going to start being able to look at and explore things that we haven't been able to. What is a quantum computer, right? It stores and manipulates data. The difference being that it's not based on something like what we think of with today's classical bits, where you have a 1 or a 0 state. Instead, what we do is we leverage quantum mechanics and quantum mechanical systems and materials to be able to manipulate and store data. This opens up the door to be able to look at very dynamic data sets and complex data sets that have a lot of interconnectedness in a way that is just completely fundamentally distinct and different from classical computers. With quantum computers, now you have additional capabilities, such as the ability to handle things like factoring.
Who can use IBM Quantum and where can they access it?
It's accessible off our IBM cloud. I think it's based fundamentally around our Qiskit, which is the toolkit, so that people can not only access it, but use our quantum computers. In fact, there are also APIs that allow you to run a classical program and then get a quantum result.
It's funny, Interpol, because every time I quote a number, it changes, right? Like, we are growing that quickly. It's over 100 members of the IBM Q network. The membership varies all across the board. So we have people who are university partners. We have other corporations that, have their own use cases and coming from an industrial kind of perspective. We have startups that are a part of it, National Lab. We have over 200 publications that have been published external from IBM. Qiskit is our software development kit. And I think, like, if anyone wanted to get started, what I would say is, like, go online, check out qiskit.org, look at the IBM quantum experience, try building your own quantum program, try dragging and dropping the gates and learning about what each of the gates is doing in the quantum circuit, which is kind of an analogy to a logical circuit, if you want to think about it from a classical standpoint.
Wow, that's exciting. I didn't realize it was so accessible. I know this weekend I'm going to be downloading that SDK and giving it a shot, but knowing that, and that there are black hats out there, unfortunately, and, with RSA encryption or 128-bit or 256 or whatever it might be, a quantum computer could probably pick that lock in a heartbeat. Jamie, what's the reality? Is quantum computing a threat to encryption?
A lot of these algorithms that people know of, like Grover's and Shor's algorithms, that are ones that could potentially, break RSA sometime in the future. These are algorithms that require error correction. And error correction is something that is pretty far out. Having a fully fault tolerant, error corrected device is pretty long term. And so at that point, like, what we're really talking about are like millions of qubits, right, and having a system set up on that scale. So in other words, don't worry, it's not going to happen anytime soon, right? However, in the meantime, like, people knowing that this is something that could be, a potential thing in the future, they've been starting to look at things like lattice-based cryptography, so like quantum safe, if you will, cryptography.
How is IBM partnering and growing the ecosystem to really advance quantum?
We're working with researchers, both on the academic side as well as on the industrial side. We're working with large companies that have created their own research areas to go after quantum. Startups are another part of what we're doing. Students, there's a whole network of universities that are involved.
I'll add to that. It's really fun doing research with our partners, because they're bringing their own use cases from their industry experience. Just some examples of things that we've done with people. We've worked with Daimler on looking at sort of next generation battery technologies and studying the chemistry and the chemical reactions that happen inside the battery with quantum computers. We've worked with Mitsubishi Chemical at looking at organic light emitting diodes anodes, so OLED devices, and studying the excitation of the different molecules.
What's behind the effort to take advantage of them now?
Yeah, so I'll just say off the bat, like, turns out most people don't pick up quantum computing overnight. Ultimately, it's not a matter of if, but when, right? This technology is going to become available and when it's going to start providing value. And so getting in early, educating yourself, understanding how you can leverage it for your own interests and your own use cases is really important. And we refer to that as being quantum ready.
So, first with regard to why now, those of you who know me, this is my second go around at IBM. 20 years ago, I was actually a member of the research staff. We also had a group that was doing quantum then. They had all the world-class experts at that time. It took me 20 years to realize why. It's approaching rapidly to a place where there's going to be business value to be had. There's going to be competitive advantage to be had. The stack, that idea really has to do with, if you think in terms of actually creating a solution that delivers business value, you're going to need a full stack, right? First, you're going to have a development kit. You're going to have simulators. Then, Jamie talked about the circuits. The quantum circuits, you can kind of think of in a simplistic way as providing the input into the quantum state. Then, to make use of that, of those quantum states, you actually have programs that you write, which deal with other complexities.
I'll add to that too, like, don't be scared. We write in Python, we use Jupyter notebooks. So they're all things that I think people are sort of used to and accustomed to, and tools that they're used to working with. Right now, like, quantum codes are very short. We only have a handful of algorithms that we're using today. And so I think if it's something that you're interested in, the barrier to entry, at least, what we've done at IBM, is quite low. You just need to know Python.
When will the industry go from research and use cases to actual practical applications?
I mean, I guess my final thoughts are, we're doing research today, right? And it's always going to be about building out the foundations necessary. With each hardware advance comes, software advances too. Theoretical advances. So all of these things are coming together at the same time. And it's the research that's going into the foundational science, which is really going to enable the next generation of use cases.
Thanks for all your insights. And next up, I'm going to play a brief 4-minute video recap of the IBM CDO Summit Series to date. And then we're going to bring back many of our panelists from the previous events to answer all your outstanding questions. Thanks again, Interpol and Jamie.
I'm Caitlin Halferty, Director of the IBM AI Accelerator and host of our Summit Series. These sessions feature prominent industry leaders that tackle big strategic ideas and that recommend actionable strategies and frameworks that we hope you will find immediately valuable in your own work.
Just because you closed your front door doesn't mean you closed your business. The biggest challenge in my world was the velocity of change of data.
Mother's Day, was the day where we saw the highest traffic. At the turn of a dime, Mother's Day became every day in terms of the network usage. The challenge that we had, that the past no longer could be used to predict the future.
I think digital risk, cyber risk, and AI risk is probably the single biggest man-made risk of this century. At IBM, we are working with your OpenScale teams and we're working with your Promontory teams.
As we urge into this world the last couple of years of increasing data privacy regulations, it's not hard to imagine at all that the next stage of that is AI regulation.
So you have laws, you have regulations, you have risks. What's on top of that? To me, that's ethics.
This report is also very important because really we heard so far so many different points of view around the AI ethics.
And I think the organizations are so hopeful for what can happen when we get it right. But if we get it wrong, it's not going to be the big advancement that will be wrong. It'll be the personal impact, which Tim talked about, that will be the harder thing to unravel.
Maybe it's best to speak about my team and my mission statement. It's drive innovation through technology to empower our staff, delight our fans, and safeguard the brand.
When I think of a hybrid cloud, it's really focused on two key attributes: operational efficiency, developer velocity, because at the end, we're trying to drive business change.
And to solve that problem, you have to get embedded into the workflow for very large organizations. When decisions, micro decisions are made.
We have over 1 billion social media followers. So if you look at our business, you start seeing all these different touch points. But really what you have is this fan in the middle.
That's what we do at USAA for our member. Our member is at the center of everything that we do, and our members' security and privacy is a big piece of that. Our insurance company decided that the right thing to do was to give back more than $1 billion in dividends to our members.
So everything we do revolves around trust. You're never going to be able to have, in IBM anyway, 400,000 privacy experts in every regulation across the globe.
Biggest overall use case is the data and AI enablement platform for an enterprise. And that needs to be on a hybrid multi-cloud thing. Otherwise, you won't be able to scale it.
Cloud and hybrid cloud is going to be the key enabler to drive the fast innovation, experimentation, data mindset, and agile delivery.
In the Department of Defense, we have a DoD data strategy, and the cloud is the key enabler to make that actually operational and real.
Cost of ownership of this platform is significant. For us, it is the cost to produce oil should be as low as possible.
Wow, so many great quotes and so little time. I have to say it was really hard selecting a 2 or 3 minute, 4 minute sizzle reel with 5 hours of incredible content and programming. So I really enjoyed reviewing all 5 of those summits, and I think you will too. So in case you missed them or you want to bone up again, be sure to go to the landing page and you can see all of those on demand. So I want to thank, most importantly, all of our speakers for doing such a great job under very challenging circumstances and for giving the CDO community your valuable time. And more importantly, I also want to thank IBM. I have to thank Caitlin and Donna and Grace and Interpol over at IBM for continuing to support this growing community of digital data and chief technology officers. And of course, I have to thank Nicole, who's also in the back end doing all the hard work here. So thanks to all of you. A reminder to everyone who's on our show today, be sure to stick around to the end because we're going to congratulate the new 2020 U.S. Chief Data Officer of the Year winner. And we'd like to, for everyone to congratulate the winner in gallery view. So stick around for that. So I'm really thrilled to bring back many of the speakers from those previous episodes to give us some closing thoughts and also to take this opportunity to answer many of the outstanding questions that you all asked. We were overwhelmed by your questions and we really appreciate that. If we don't get to them today, we've got them on the IBM blog as well. So let's get started. Episode 2 was on AI ethics and trust back in July. And Caitlin, since you're director of IBM's AI Accelerator, can you give us your thoughts on that program and maybe some important takeaways from AI Ethics and Trust event?
Sure, happy to. Thanks, Dave. That was a key one for us, and we found that it was very popular. A lot of questions. We were fortunate to hear from, Jerry Gupta with Swiss Re, Tim Nagel, U.S. Bank, and Joanne Stonier with MasterCard. I believe Jerry is joining us a bit later today, and others. The focus was on how critical AI ethics and trust is today. We covered some research points. 81% of consumers say they're more concerned versus last year on how companies use their data. 75% are now less likely to trust an organization with their personal information. We know that's critical. Average spending on AI, it looks to more than double in the next 3 years. So we're closely tracking that aspect. And the final comment I'll make is, I think as a community, we surface the insight that only by embedding ethical principles into AI applications and processes can we build systems that people can trust. And many argue that while it's an incredible opportunity, as we heard from Jerry, it's arguably the greatest man-made threat of our time as well. So we looked at, who owns it and how do we as data and technology practitioners and leaders build, innovate, and deploy AI with a focus on instilling human values, creating transparency, providing providing education and really being collaborative. So I know we're fortunate to have Francesca, a real expert, on with us as well. So Dave, let me turn it over back to you to bring Francesca into the conversation.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. I do see Francesca here. And Francesca Rossi is the AI Ethics Global Leader at IBM, and she contributed to the report on AI ethics beyond compliance. Welcome back, Francesca.
Thank you.
Good to see you again. What do you think are the greatest ethics challenges for data and technology leaders heading into 2021?
Well, I would like to focus on the fact that during this difficult year, the 2020, especially with the pandemic, we realized that science and technology is really essential, to accelerate solutions to these emergencies and to these big problems. One is the pandemic, of course, but also climate change and many others. So we know that we need to accelerate, this development of science and technology. But of course, we need to do that in a way that is aligned to our values, because as Kathleen said, otherwise we will not trust the technology, and so we will not even get the beneficial effect of the technology, because if we don't trust it. So in order to do that, it's important that in 2021, companies understand that technology solutions to address the AI ethics issues or the data ethics issues are, of course, essential and are of course necessary, but they are not the whole solution. So technology solutions should be put together with non-technological solutions, such as putting in place governance frameworks, methodologies, education, training, awareness, because as we know, for example, the typical issue of AI bias, yes, the technology should be not biased, but the developer should be aware of the fact that they can inject their own bias, because we are all very biased. So that's very important. And it's also time to do it inside each company, but also together with governments, with standard organizations, with other countries. So in a very collaborative and multi-stakeholder way. So that's my thing for 2021.
Thank you so much, Francesca. And people can download the link to that report on AI ethics and trust beyond compliance. And feel free to ping Francesca for more questions. Moving on to the next episode. In August, we held the episode on CDOs and Chief Technology Officer in Partnership. Caitlin, Caitlin and I should say, we're co-hosting this coast to coast. Caitlin's in San Francisco, and I'm in wonderful Long Beach in New York. So Caitlin, how about episode 3?
Sure. So that was an important one. And my first question, Bernardo, it's a pleasure to have you back with us. And thanks for rejoining. I mentioned at the beginning of the kickoff that we were really looking to deepen our partnership with Chief Technology Officers this year. So Bernardo, it's been a pleasure having you with us. And you had such great insights to share. So we had a lot of questions for you, but in the short time that we had today, hoping to ask you, given your vantage point as Chief Digital and Technology Officer, inclusive of data and your significant scope of responsibilities, how are you driving revenue growth, transformation activities, and what's really a rapidly evolving data privacy and regulatory environment?
Yeah, great. Thanks. Good question. So we are a company that basically lives and dies from data and data analytics. Our products are based on data feeds and analytics on top of those data feeds. Just to give you some thoughts on where we are, this year alone, we combined 4 companies into JD Power. And with those 4 companies, we have a very large set of diverse data sets. So our hypothesis on growth is how to combine these data sets for the first time in order to build products that solve significant problems to our clients. So the way we do this is that we put all data sets normalized in a cloud environment, hybrid cloud environment, and we tell our product teams, go for it. Be very close to our clients. You can use these data sets to provide solutions to build products. So we have data ingestion, normalization, data processing, analytics, machine learning environments to train models, and APIs to build products. So we think about it as a loosely synchronized set of product teams being very close to client. The only synchronization point in the whole company is data governance. So in data governance, we look at 3 things. 1, possible cannibalization of using data sets in places where it might cannibalize revenue in some other product lines. 2, compliance with the constraints that our partners, data partners, put on the use of those data sets. And 3rd, government regulatory changes that affect how that data set is built. So we do have some tools to allow us to do it effectively, like we have all the data sets and how they map into different product lines. But the bottom line is at the end, there is no silver bullet. We have a data governance committee, multidisciplinary, with a very high component of legal. It's very important to have a very strong legal department that knows regulatory very quickly and they become very knowledgeable about the data sets. And we just meet and discuss potential implications and change in regulatory environments to the way we use our data. No product can be launched without going to the data governance committee. So in a world where we think that loosely synchronized teams and distribution of innovation is really important, we have decided to centralize data governance as a gate to allow us to manage that. And that sounds like a bottleneck, but if at the beginning it's kind of hard to bring people up to speed. But once you have a team that understands all the data sets and the regulatory environment, it becomes very effective to make decisions and have the right level of judgment to help us move forward. So right now it looks like a bottleneck, but we actually can do it very fast.
Knowing you, I know you guys are doing it. So thank you so much, Bernardo. Back to you, Dave.
Thanks so much, Bernardo. And also on that program on CDOs and CTOs in partnership was Chris Wright. He's Senior VP and Chief Technology Officer at Red Hat. And as you know, IBM purchased Red Hat a couple of years back, and that's a key foundation for their hybrid cloud strategy. Chris, it was kind of hard to select a quote from you. There were so many great quotes in that highlight reel. If you haven't seen that episode with Bernardo from JD Power and Chris Wright from Red Hat, and we also had Krishna Bhagavatula, the Chief Technology Officer at the National Basketball Association. I encourage you to check out that episode. But Chris, Chris, welcome back, I should say.
Thank you.
Great to see you again. Given the plethora of platforms and tech, how does one prioritize tech spend and evaluate these platforms and pull it all together to solve pressing data challenges and, more importantly, deliver real business value?
First of all, it's a non-trivial task. And I think you just heard a little bit of that from Bernardo talking about the complication of combining data from different sources and ensuring governance over that entire process. We look at that actually quite similarly. I think first, always can you break the problem down in smaller pieces? And so looking at domains or capabilities that are required for you to really generate the right benefit outcome for your business, whether it's answering a question that you have to give an answer to, like GDPR, so there's a compliance question, or whether it's being able to answer a question that's about engagement with customers or revenue generation. The way we're looking at it is first, that sort of federated view that Bernardo gave, which is complicated from a data point of view, is very much about a hybrid cloud. So how do you take data from different sources and applications from the fast-moving open source world and bring those together? And that, to me, means a data-centric platform. The combination of that data-centric platform and then the latest and greatest tools handed to data scientists to enable rapid experimentation. And I think the most important part there is how quickly can you iterate on model refinement. And that gives you the early successes so that you can sort of build momentum and really overall, create this longer term business impact, which starts with recognizing there's no perfect one size fits all solution. Data scientists have a rapid moving set of tools, and knowing that we want to help them move quickly and iterate and do that. The more experiments you can perform in a fixed period of time, the better your models will be.
Absolutely. Love it, Chris. Thank you so much. And, for those of you who missed it again, tune into that program on CDOs and CTOs in partnership. It was a fantastic session. And now we're going to move to episode 4, which was on data privacy and governance. And that was in September. Caitlin, back over to you.
So great to tackle this one. And Alan, look forward to asking you this question. You've been with us since we started these summits in the beginning, one of our founding community members. So thank you. We've had the pleasure of doing many events together over the years. It's always a pleasure. It's great to see your role evolve, as you mentioned, to expand to include Chief Privacy Officer responsibilities for insurance, data warehousing, cloud migration. And we know that USA sets a gold standard for customer experience. You know, you shared that your business decided the right thing to do was to give back more than 1 billion in dividends to your members, which is incredible. So a lot of questions came in. Would love to hear more about, you know, how much risk is acceptable as you're balancing privacy with competitive differentiation, you know, to deliver that exceptional customer and member experience that your business is so known for.
Yeah, thank you, Caitlin. It's a great question. You know, at USAA, our members are really at the center of everything that we do. And our goal is to deliver personalized experiences for every one of them. Our approach in terms of balancing that risk of privacy with competitive differentiation comes down to really two crucial things. We have to be transparent about what information we are using, and we have to let our members know how we control it, how they can control how we use it. So for example, our company is focused on the military and their families. So today, on every one of the 200,000 calls that we're going to take today, our phone menu is going to be dynamic, and it's going to list only the products that they own, not the ones that we want to sell them or all the products that we have to sell, but the ones that they're relevant to them. And then when you do reach a representative, they're going to greet you by your personal military title, just like we've done for the last 98 years. We always want our members' experiences to be as personal and relevant as they can be. And one of our newest and even most exciting features is the ability to give you an online insurance quote using the least amount of your personal information. Not only does this result in a personalized experience that can attract new members, but it also mirrors the privacy industry's best practice of what's called information minimization, reducing the need to gather a lot of personal data. And we do all this stuff because of all the other types of personalization that are out there. We know that our members aren't just comparing their service they get from USAA with other insurance companies and banks. They're comparing it to Facebook and Amazon and Google, those recommendations that are highly relevant. They expect those recommendations to be super relevant, like not trying to sell an annuity to an 18-year-old. So really what it comes down to at USAA is that it's a fine balance. Our members expect both privacy and personalized experiences, but they can't get the personalization without us knowing at least something about them. So we believe that the key to managing that risk is to be both fully transparent about the information we have and then give the member the control for how we use it.
Thank you so much, Alan. Fantastic. Back to you, Dave.
Thanks, Caitlin. Thank you, Alan. It's great to see you again. Also on that program on data privacy and governance was the VP and Chief Privacy Officer at IBM, Christina Montgomery. And I see Christina in here. You know, she spent 5 years as board secretary for IBM, so she saw what was coming, you know, years in advance. Christina, you had so many quotes there. Loved your quote about you can't expect IBM to have 400,000 privacy experts all over the globe. I mean, that applies to just about every company out there. Thank you so much for your comments and welcome back.
Yeah, hey, thanks. Thanks for having me back.
Thank you, Christina. What would you say are the greatest governance and privacy challenges for data and technology leaders heading into 2021?
Yeah, I mean, I think 2021 in many ways is going to be an inflection point around some of the dynamic we've seen this year play out, where there's this, you know, sense that tech is evolving faster than regulation can keep up. And this, in some sense, can erode some trust in technology. One of the areas that I'm focused on and we're focused on is data sovereignty. So the pandemic increased the pace of accelerated the pace of digitization. And at the same time, you know, you had this decision coming out of Europe, Schrems II, where the European Court of Justice shone a spotlight on this issue of data sovereignty and cross-border data transfers. And you've seen that along with increasing calls from around the globe to restrict the flow of data across borders at a time when we really need it most. So this is an area we're focused on at IBM. We believe that tech sovereignty should be based on values, not geography, and that digital protectionism that's based on geography is harmful to consumers and to our economy and will hinder growth. So that's an area of focus for us for sure. The sheer volume of privacy regulations that we're seeing enacted around the world and the pace at which they're being enacted is another area of concern. We had 8 comprehensive laws last year, and probably another 8 coming up at least in 2021. and they each have a local flavor that presents a compliance challenge for global businesses. So many of these also touch on data flows and data localization. So we're very focused on helping to ensure that these laws get enacted in a way that builds trust with as much operational consistency as possible, so you can in practice carry them out. And then I would say a third around equity and inclusion. So we had a lot of discussion around technologies that were deployed for COVID, for example, and we had a lot of focus on privacy and ensuring that they were privacy preserving. But we're seeing challenges go beyond privacy, right? So if you look at something like exposure notification apps and why those haven't really gotten traction, one of the reasons is because, hey, not everybody has a smartphone, right? So keeping inclusion and equity front of mind as we deploy tech solutions is another area for us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Christina. And thanks for all your contributions. You're like a lighthouse, keeping us all safe. So I appreciate that. And now we're going to bring in, and thank you, Alan. That was a great segment. For those of you who didn't catch data privacy and governance, be sure to look that one up. Another reminder to everyone, speakers and delegates, stick around till the end because we're going to congratulate the new CDO of the Year award winner at the end of the program. We'd love for you all to be in gallery mode to join us in the celebration. So let's bring back some of the speakers from the October event on hybrid cloud. And back over to you, Caitlin.
Great, thank you, Dave. Eileen, pleasure to have you back with us. And this first question I'll direct toward you. You know, the work you do on behalf of the United States Department of Air Force as their Chief Data Officer is so critical now more than ever. You certainly contributed and talked about the importance of the DoD data strategy and the role that cloud played as a key enabler. I know you're well versed in ethical frameworks and considerations as well. So the question, you know, to you is, if you could identify the most impactful learning that your organization will take away, you know, from this year, we'd love to hear more about that.
Caitlin, thanks for including us today. Really for us, it's about, we've embraced the agile development model and it's here to stay. As it's not just about rapidly deploying new capabilities and driving them out quickly and efficiently, but it has also helped us really shape and really push forward change management. Change management can be one of that data culture shift, can be one of our biggest opportunities to drive the mission forward. And it has allowed us to incrementally push that change management out into our platform moving forward. And so it's not just about the tech and the data, it's really that culture piece has really been helping us to push forward. I think the other really important lesson that we've learned is that our investment in our air and space professionals continues to drive that change management piece. And it is a strong investment, and it giving us very large returns. So the people piece, when we talk about people, processes, and tech, as well as the data, that data first ecosystem, it is really truly a comprehensive package. And agile, really driving capabilities, is giving us the velocity to really excel and push mission readiness.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Eileen. I look forward to further discussion and partnership with you and the organization. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Eileen. Nice to see you again. And we've also got two other panelists from that session on hybrid multi-cloud use cases at scale, Dr. Satyam Priyadarshi and Sanjeev Adala. Sanjeev is Senior Vice President and Chief Information and Digital Officer at AES. Nice to see you again, Sanjeev.
Hey, thank you, David.
Quick question for you. What is the top priority for you and the AES Corp right now compared to the beginning of 2020?
You know, this industry, energy industry, is going through rapid and very disruptive transformation across the board. Digitalization is one of the biggest disruptive trends industry is facing. You know, we really articulated our digital vision and strategy to really drive the business transformation, both internal customer experience, new business models, and also really focusing on launching new digital platform businesses. I think, look, COVID is really driving significant acceleration in the adoption, both internal and a customer base. So now our priority and the focus is about really scaling and accelerating our digitalization and artificial intelligence implementations, both within the company and also really driving the experience innovation to really drive offer new product and services that's digitally enabled, and also to launch a new business models and digital platform businesses. That's what's going to be our significant focus and acceleration.
Great, thank you so much, Sanjeev. So Satyam, next question over to you. You spoke about the great work that you're doing at Halliburton, and we received many follow-up questions. So the one we wanted to ask is, what's the one data metric that you see has the most potential impact and perhaps is least understood or most ignored by a majority of companies? Would love to hear your thoughts.
Yep. So I'll tell you something which I learned in last 3 years of my journey. And the metric, if I were to put one metric, that would be called time to value from the data. Because any discussion on data and deriving insights and actions actually ends up in discussions about, who owns the data? Come on, if you're talking about a single enterprise, come on, we should be probably know who owns the data. And I think just earlier, Christina was there from a governance point of view. And there are people like that who knows exactly who owns the data. So why enterprises spend time on it? The second one reason is that this discussion will lead to on technology driven rather than value driven. And that is really a challenge because if your discussion goes into what cloud to do or what appliance to do, then you have not actually wasted your time in creating the value. The third part that along that discussion happens is that the actual when is the need for analyzing the data, right? Not just collecting the data, what business process is there, so that contextualize value creation is not discussed. Everybody thinks, oh, let's do AI, but in what context? And so I think this time to value from the data in the right context is one single metric that most people don't understand, even though everybody says, oh, we know how to use the data.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Satyam. Back to you, Dave.
Thanks, Caitlin. Thanks so much, Eileen, Satyam, and Sanjeev. I have to say right now, I am absolutely thrilled because we're about to be joined once again by 3 consecutive CDO Club CDO of the Year award winners, Linda Avery, who won last year in 2019, Anthony Scriffignano of Dun & Bradstreet, who won in 2018, and IBM's own Interpol Bhandari, who won in 2017. And I have to say, when I look back, I had to look at every previous episode to get the highlights reel together. I have to say, I look back on our conversation in June, and I think that was one of my favorite episodes. It was, the start of the pandemic, the landscape was uncertain, the terrain was and still is challenging, and yet we had this authentic, very heart-centered conversation filled with great advice and tips for CDOs to lead during these tumultuous times. So I'd encourage you all to take a look at that June event once again on CDOs leading during turbulent times. So thanks again to you all for coming back for the Summit Series and to answer a few questions. So first one for Linda Avery. I really loved your comments. You had so many great quotes saying, every day is Mother's Day now on the network since the pandemic hit, and the past could no longer be used to predict the future. Maybe you could give us some tips now. What are some strategic goals, especially in light of the fact that we're about to announce the 2020 Chief Data Officer of the Year award winner? What do you think are some strategic goals that the data and technology leaders out there can do who aspire to become CDOs? What goals should they set for themselves, Linda? You're on mute.
So I just wanted to say this is a really great question. And I'm actually going to build on Satyam's references to value. So what comes to the top of my mind is actually the value story. I can't stress enough the importance of being able to talk in terms of real business value and how your org can contribute to it. And that means that you need to understand the financials of the organizations that you support and where your biggest impact can be. So being able to translate how investments in things like data foundation, like data governance, data architecture, data engineering, being able to explain how that's going to actually lead to monetization, efficiencies, risk reduction, all of that is key. And it's really not going to be obvious to people. So as a chief data officer, you have to be able to tell a compelling story. You're going to be competing for funding. You've got to change how people think and how they work. And you're going to be asking your colleagues for a lot. So how you communicate value is going to be key to your success. You need to get really good at that. I cannot emphasize that enough.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Linda. And best of luck. I know you got your hands full at Verizon now that everyone's working from home.
Yes, we're a little busy.
A little busy, yeah, a little busy. So also welcome back once again to Anthony Scriffignano, one of the CDO Club's favorite chief data scientists. He's Senior VP and Chief Data Scientist at Dun & Bradstreet. As I mentioned, he won the CDO of the Year award in 2018. And Anthony, you had so many great quotes and so much great content in that June episode, especially around the velocity of disruption. And just because you close your front door doesn't mean you close your business. You are a quote machine, Anthony. What do you, especially in light of the fact that now we're about to announce the new winner, what are the top 3 ways that CDOs need to rethink their jobs in the context of all this disruption?
Thanks very much, David. It's such an honor to be with this group in this Brady Bunch gathering that we have here. Disruption, when we think about disruption, we tend to think of it as recognize the disruption, respond to the disruption, recover from the disruption, move on, right? That's not true. Because first of all, the disruption doesn't end. It takes us to some new normal. There's no guarantee that we'll get back to anything close to where we were before. More than likely, it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 4 steps forward, hopefully not 5 steps back, right? So we have to think about that. We also have to think about the fact that while we're being disrupted, something else happens that's also disrupted. So we were gathered to talk about disruption in our worlds in the context of COVID. I love the "every day became Mother's Day" quote. That just, every time I hear that, but the reality is we were already disrupted by trade agreements and social unrest and other tensions that were going on. And we heard mention in one of the comments earlier in this session about data sovereignty and cross-border data flows and all the regulatory changes. All of those are disruptions as well. So if we think that we have the luxury of dealing with one disruption at a time, we're being naive. Yeah. That's the first thing I would say. And the second thing I would say is that think about the advice that you would give to yourself even just a few years ago around any of the things that we're talking about. You would have to use language that you wouldn't have understood then. So we talked about AI. I think I understood that in the 1980s, right? But now we're talking about ethics and trust in the context of AI. I don't think that we would have understood that the same way just a few years ago as we understand it now. We talked about hybrid multi-cloud. Well, I think we understand what those words mean, but they mean a very different thing than they meant just a few years ago because some of the impossible became possible. Thank you very much, IBM, right? And in the context of hybrid multi-cloud and ethics and AI and trust, we have to think about data governance and data sovereignty and cross-border data flows. So all of these things happen at once. And then if we think that somehow we're going to get control of that, here comes quantum computing. Right. And my favorite quote today, which was the ultimate quantum comment, was every time I quote a number, it changes, which is the quantum observation problem, right?
Right. That was,
so I just love that. That was awesome.
They're growing quantum.
Yeah, right. Growing quantum. So it was a quantum comet, if you will. So, now I think we understood quantum computing. I love all the nerds laughing right now. A quantum computing concept we understood, but now we're talking about quantum resilient encryption, whatever that means. So disruption is the new normal, and constant disruption and hyper disruption is the new normal. So to summarize, and my answer to you, David, my comment would be, take a deep breath. It's always going to be like this. Today is the simplest day of your career. Tomorrow will be more complicated. Get used to it, embrace that, and it will be awesome.
Yeah, I would add to that, ignore the news cycle. As soon as the election results were in, then there were the court cases. And then after that, it's the transition team. It's never going to end. Just turn it all off and focus on getting work.
Stop waiting for it to end, right?
Great. Thank you so much. And now finally, the final panelist on that CDO of the Year panel is IBM's own Inderpal Bhandari. And I have to thank you again, Inderpal. You and your team have been fabulous. I appreciate you getting the message out to the community and again, being a leading light like Christina and others and Seth at IBM. And I know I've learned a lot, and the feedback we're getting from the community and the number of viewers of these events sort of validates that. Any final thoughts, Inderpal, on the series or comments before we hear from the 2020 U.S. Chief Data Officer of the Year award winner?
So Dave, I'll keep my remarks brief. I know we want to get to the 2020 CDO Club award winner. And since at least from, at least each winner since 2017 has been better than the 2017 winner. So eager to hear. I have to clarify that because I could see Anthony. And he's a quote machine in 6 or 7 different languages. So
right.
Be careful with what we tell him. So I'll keep it brief. First of all, thank you very much for you all being here. I just learned a lot myself just listening to everything that you had to say, and this was really a font of knowledge and expertise that assembled here for this final conference has been tremendous, and I hope the listeners agree with that as well. I also want to thank my colleague Jamie Garcia for coming in and helping educate us about quantum computing, which I think is something again on the leading edge, but very much closing at hand, so that's something that where there's business value and advantage to be had. I think the final comment I'd make, just building on my colleagues, the key mindset that I've found to be very useful since I started this work of Chief Data Officer in 2006 has been change. You're a change agent. Change is going to happen. A lot of change is going to happen. You've got to go with that flow, and you've got to figure out a way to deliver business value, in the midst of all that change. So you have to embrace it and then grow from it and create business value for your company.
Thank you so much, Inderpal. Echoing the comments of Bernardo Rodriguez at JD Power and Satyam and Sanjeev at AES and Chris Wright over at Red Hat. That concept comes up over and over again, delivering business value. So thanks to all of you and to everyone who contributed your time today. And now, without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to announce the CDO Club 2020 U.S. Chief Data Officer of the Year Award winner for outstanding service and achievements in data and AI and analytics to Mona Siddiqui. Mona is Senior Vice President of Clinical Strategy and Quality and Enterprise Clinical Management at Humana. And from 2017 until 2020, Mona was the first ever Chief Data Officer at the immediate office of the Secretary in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And in that role, Dr. Siddiqui led the effort to connect the nation's healthcare data by building an institutional infrastructure at HHS through private and public partnerships. In February 2020, this year, Dr. Siddiqui joined Humana as Senior Vice President, and her role is to drive improved and personalized experience of health through leveraging data and technology to enable the right care at the right time. Obviously, given the pandemic, we're eternally grateful for Mona's many accomplishments, especially since her work at improving the healthcare system has directly led to better outcomes for all. At HHS, Mona and her team developed a technology stack to enable enterprise data sharing, implemented good data governance practices, and established a data science and AI training program, all with the goal of helping HHS address major healthcare issues now and in the future. I'm honored to recognize Mona Siddiqui as the U.S. CDO of the Year Award for 2020. Congratulations, Mona. I hope you'll all join us in congratulating Mona as well.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Mona.
Thank you.
And welcome to the club.
Well, this is great. I feel like I'm, joined by a community of nerds, so it's wonderful.
We'd love to, if you could, we'd love to have you share some of your time at HHS and cover some of the things that you worked on while you were at Health and Human Services.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, David, where you started or where you hit on is maybe where I'll start, which is we're living through a time period right now, unlike anything that, we've ever lived through before, where the importance of data and connected data, I think, has never been more pronounced than it is right now. In understanding what's happening throughout our country, and understanding what's happening in local areas in our neighborhoods, and how do we reach out to help to identify those people proactively who need help the most. So in my mind, this is really the ultimate use case for what we were trying to build during my 3 years at HHS, which was essentially a connected data ecosystem across the enterprise, across CDC, across FDA, NIH, our agencies for preparedness and response. And I often had people say to me, like, why do we need to do this? What's the importance of connecting data across CDC, across our disaster and response agencies, across FDA? And we're living through it right now, right? This is really the ultimate use case. And I will also just say, kind of having gone through that process, and I think as I was hearing some of the conversation before, the role of a chief data officer, I think we're all sort of, navigating through it in the last many years, but it's not just what it sounds like, right? It is in some ways you're, I said I don't have a legal background, but you have to sort of understand the complex regulatory and legal environment and really be able to navigate that. You have to be able to navigate an ethical landscape that just has not kept pace with the changes in the data domain. And maybe, a hard lesson learned for me is in some ways you are the chief enterprise change management officer, because really addressing the data challenges of an enterprise is to go into the depths of that organization, understand how it functions, and then try to change it from inside, which is one of the toughest things to do and takes a long, long time. Which is why really when I was at HHS, which is a $1.3 trillion organization, the largest civilian agency on the planet, focusing on the technical infrastructure to connect data, I would say is probably the simplest. The technology is really the simplest part. It's not simple, but it's the simplest part of what you have to build. I also, people's eyes glaze over oftentimes when you talk about governance, but data governance is incredibly important. Creating an infrastructure for how you address ethical challenges is important. And then, for us as a public sector enterprise, creating a pipeline of talent that was skilled in data science and AI was equally important. So that not only were we creating the talent to generate value from data, but also the ultimate change agents, right, that outlast really any one person. Clearly, like, this was not just my efforts, but the efforts of a number of people, both those who were are proponents of having a chief data officer for these public agencies, but then also the incredible team that I had that really, we were a startup inside of a really large bureaucratic organization, and people who really understood that connecting data can actually help save lives. And I think we're going to continue, to see that. I mean, from my health background, I will say, whether it's understanding the side effects of a treatment or the right hospital to go to for a rare condition, or, the ultimate right now, which is how do you address and mitigate the impacts of a pandemic, really starting from individuals and working across the community. Data is at the core of how of a successful strategy to be able to address what we're living through right now. So I guess I would just say chief data officers really have immense power, I think, to make this case. I think we have to make the case as we do the work, and really demonstrate, I think, what some of the comments that I was hearing before, the value to the business, to the enterprise that you're operating within, and how leveraging data can help you do better, help you lead better, and really help make your organization a critical player in all of the community efforts that require data to be successful. So thank you for the recognition. Thank you for elevating the role of chief data officers. I think it's you know, the unsung heroes who, you know, when we do our jobs well, can really help to transform organizations and the ways in which communities work. So again, thank you. And I appreciate you sending this here. So
the award is
again,
there. Yay!
I did. Yes, thank you.
Congratulations, Mona. Thank you,
Thank
Mona.
you.
Really can't thank you enough. And of course, I should say, I think pound for pound, there were more PhDs in the chief data officer space than any other C-suite title. But you hold the unique distinction with your domain expertise. You're actually a doctor in medicine. So when we refer to you as Dr. Siddiqui, we mean that. And thank you so much to you and your team. We appreciate it. And certainly with this award, the CDO community recognizes your achievements. Thank you, Mona. Back over to Caitlin for closing comments and a wrap up.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining us. Mona, congratulations. Excellent comments. As you said in your closing remark, it's all about elevating the role of chief data officers. And that was our goal when we started this community about 6 years ago. And the resiliency of all of us to bring this online and deliver this digitally. You gave us your time, your expertise. We all got comfortable with the Zoom format. I appreciate the patience and the perseverance. You invited us into your home offices all year long. So thank you so much for joining. Please stay in touch. Best wishes as we close out the year for both the business value side at work as well as hopefully a healthy holiday season. And we look forward to being back with you all in 2021 as we kick off. So thank you again for a fantastic series, fantastic year, and congratulations, Mona.